Hello there. In this tasting, I'm taking a look at a wine called Le Difese. It's an Indicazione Geografica Tipica from Tuscany, the Bolgheri region. The wine is made by Tenuta San Guido, the producers of Sassicaia, possibly Italy's most famous wine. Certainly on the Wine Searcher website, Sassicaia is the most searched for wine we have. And within the portfolio of Tenuta San Guido, this is seen as their, I'll say third wine, but it's not third wine in the sense that you might see in Bordeaux, where it might be made from declassified grapes that might potentially have gone into the first wine. Instead, this is a wine with a different blend. It's predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon, but it contains about 30% of Sangiovese, which you don't see in either the Guidalberto, which is its sort of larger sibling, or the Sassicaia, the estate's Grand Vin. And the other thing to note is that this wine is made with a large proportion of fruit that's bought in. So it's not a wine made solely with estate-grown fruit. The first vintage of Le Difese was 2002. So it's a wine whose grapes come from southern Tuscany, I think from a much broader area than Bolgheri itself. And so some of the Sangiovese can have slightly cooler touches, having come from more inland sites at higher altitude. This is the 2021 vintage of this. The 2021 vintage started with quite a harsh winter, where temperatures below freezing allowed the vine to get proper dormancy, and they know that this would have killed any harmful insects in the vineyards. So it was a good start. However, when spring started in late March, some of the early buds were then caught by a frost, so particularly the Sangiovese was affected, and so yields were lower in 2021 than they might otherwise have been because of damage done to some of the buds at this stage. Conditions were relatively rainy until mid-May, and then conditions changed to beautiful sunshine. June saw quite regular temperatures, but July showed intense sunshine to the extent that they actually had to paint kaolin, a sort of clay, onto the canopies to prevent the leaves from being sunburned. This intense sunshine was finally broken in mid-August by some rain, and in general ripening took place in beautiful conditions that allowed good phenolic ripeness. Acids and pH levels were respectable, sugar levels weren't particularly high, and the seeds in the berries were beautifully ripe. Combined with the juicy pulp, this was some really lovely fruit. Harvest took place by hand. The Sangiovese they started picking on the 7th of September, with picking of Cabernet Sauvignon starting on the 20th of September and finishing on the 2nd of October. At the winery, the fruit went onto a sorting table where any unripe, undersized or damaged fruit was eliminated. Destemming went on as gently as possible, and the fruit was crushed into stainless steel tanks for fermentation. Fermentation temperatures were restricted to between 27 and 28 degrees Celsius to prevent them being too extractive, to prevent them pulling harsh tannins from the fruit. And they did regular pump overs, pumping the must back over the cap of skins, or rack and return, where the entire contents of the tank were taken out and then returned back on top of the cap of skins in the juice. And this had the benefit of introducing oxidation, and they believe this helps to soften the tannins and also to give it a beautiful perfume to the wine. Malolactic conversion was conducted in tank towards the end of November, and the wine then stayed for 3 or 4 months in tank, allowing it to settle, and it was racked off any sediments. Then went into barrel. The barrels were all barriques. They were all used barriques that had previously either held Sassicaia or their other wine, Guidalberto. They do use a small amount of American oak sometimes for Guidalberto, so this would have been predominantly used French oak barriques with perhaps a tiny portion of used American oak. The wine spent 6 to 8 months in barrel before being bottled. And I have to say I'm very excited to look at this because I find Le Difese is often a really good value for money wine, showing some really good winemaking that gives finesse and quality without an enormous price tag. So let's have a look at it, shall we? The colour is a relatively dark ruby, but it doesn't seem that deep or dense. It's probably at best medium intensity. I can see through it very easily. The wine has, according to its label, 14% alcohol, and it's quite readily forming tears on the side of the glass there as I swirl it. So let's have a look at the aroma, shall we? I think this is actually one of the really pretty aspects of Le Difese. It frequently has, and this vintage does, a really beautiful perfume. There's a very lifted, very high-toned red fruit here. It's juicy, fresh mulberry, over touches of that sort of dried leaf forest floor, hints of cedar, touches of mushroom. There's a savoury umami note under the beautiful vivacious fruit notes that are there on the initial aromas. Having this in a nice sized glass to allow those perfumes to express themselves is certainly well worth it. So let's have a taste. On the palate, that's got a lovely freshness. Instantly I'm salivating. There are fine tannins. There's a juicy, lively, vivacious red fruit. The acid is showing up the slightly grainy, very fine nature of the tannins. And the acidity is giving the wine really lovely length. It's really got a mouth-watering freshness. And the red fruit starts off with notes of mulberries and raspberries, but actually has greater density. There's a ripe plum note there. And the fact that there's not a huge oak influence, I mean, yes, it spent 8 months in barrel, but these are old barrels. And I think really those have just polished up and given finesse to the tannins there, which is so smooth and beautifully integrated. The wine's of mid-weight. The fact that it's 14% alcohol doesn't seem to stand out at all, because the freshness is so intense and there's a good intensity of the red fruit. The wine doesn't quite have the same complexity, not surprisingly, as the Sassicaia, but it does have that elegance and poise. It's beautifully balanced. It's lovely to drink now. Having said that, its acidity, I'm sure, and those fine tannins will easily give it the ability to age for 4 or 5 years, if not longer. I really think that for a wine that is probably 1/10 of the price of Sassicaia, its more august eldest sibling, I think this is a wine that really delivers on elegance, perfume and beauty. Looking at our Wine Searcher aggregated score, this has a score of 90 out of 100 from the critics. I actually think perhaps it's being slightly hard done by there, but I think that's still a very good score for a wine at this price. And it's a wine that I'm certainly going to enjoy finishing up. So thank you so much for joining us. I do hope you found the tasting of interest. If you have, do please press the like button. We'd really appreciate that. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, please do sign up and subscribe to our channel. It would be fantastic to have your support there. If you've got any comments, please leave those in the comments box below. I'll leave a link to the Wine Searcher webpage in the notes below, and you can follow that and you can find out where the wine's available, what its price is, and there are tabs on that page which will give you more background information into where it comes from, into the producer, into how it's made. There are links to critics' notes, pricing, and you can see about other vintages of the same wine as well. So thank you so much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed it, and I do hope you'll come and join us again for another tasting in the very near future. Until then, bye for now.